What if it was all fake? Not just exaggerated, not just cleverly spun, but meticulously scripted, staged, and sold. A royal birth that never happened. You remember the photo, don't you? That sunny, carefully orchestrated moment in May 2019 when Meghan Markle and Prince Harry introduced baby Archie to the world. White dress, beaming smiles, cradled bundle. It was the picture-perfect fairy tale, the one that melted headlines and silenced critics. But what if that moment, the one that was supposed to mark the beginning of a new royal chapter, was nothing more than a well-lit illusion? What if there was no baby? No hospital room, no labor, no birth. Sound unthinkable? That's exactly what they were counting on. Because behind palace walls, whispers were already spiraling into quiet screams. Staffers questioned inconsistencies. Journalists noticed the subtle timeline errors. Physicians, off record, asked questions that no one dared to say aloud. And then came the footage, the one moment that would break the illusion for millions. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But we'll get to that. This isn't a conspiracy theory video. This is a story of contradictions, cover-ups, and a monarchy suddenly forced to reckon with one of the most stunning accusations ever leveled against a royal figure, that Meghan Markle was never pregnant. And worse, that everyone around her, from press officers to family members, knew something didn't add up, but said nothing. Until now. Let's back up. Why does this matter? Why bring this up in 2025 when the world has supposedly moved on? Because the story isn't over. In fact, it's unraveling faster than ever. As legal documents surface, royal communications leak, and the Crown's own historians scramble to revise the record, the truth that was buried for years is finally clawing its way to the surface. You're about to hear testimony from former palace aides, royal photographers, hospital insiders, and yes, even a woman many believe may have been the actual mother of Archie. Not through blood, but through surrogacy. And don't worry, we'll name names. This isn't about attacking motherhood. It's not about judging anyone's personal fertility choices. It's about the question that everyone else is too afraid to ask out loud. Did Meghan Markle stage an entire pregnancy to secure her place in royal history? And if so, who helped her do it? Let's talk about the bump. Remember how fast it appeared, then disappeared? How some days she looked 7 months along, and other days, like she'd barely eaten breakfast? There's footage. We'll break it down. There's metadata from photos, eyewitness contradictions, even a leaked email chain from a senior royal advisor asking, is this the plan? Is this what we're really going with? But here's the twist. The palace stayed silent. They always do. Until they don't. And when they did speak, it wasn't with a press release. It wasn't a press conference. It wasn't even an off-the-record briefing. No, it was something far colder, far more calculated. A private dossier sent directly to royal legal counsel, detailing every inconsistency, every suspicious timeline, and every staged moment of that so-called pregnancy. Who wrote it? We'll tell you. But first, understand the stakes. If there was no real birth, then Archie's status as a royal heir could be invalidated. If there was no pregnancy, then lies were signed into the public record, and possibly even into legal documents like birth certificates. If the truth was covered up, then King Charles, Prince William, and other senior royals could be complicit, either through active deception or willful ignorance. And if all of that sounds dramatic, just wait until you hear what Harry himself allegedly told his therapist in a Montecito session last year. But let's go back to the beginning. The photo op. The announcement. The parade of baby bumps through New York streets, glittering maternity dresses on red carpets, the glowing Vogue interviews. All of it, from bump cradling to birth plans, was crafted to tell one specific story. Meghan Markle, pregnant duchess, mother of a royal heir. A story that was powerful, emotional, politically useful, and, according to new evidence, completely fabricated. Because behind the scenes, palace aides were noticing inconsistencies. Meghan's team would ban certain camera angles. Photographers were asked not to shoot from the side. Staffers were instructed to refer to her bump as growing beautifully, even when it hadn't changed in weeks. And then there was the folding. If you've seen the footage, you already know. Meghan enters a studio for a sit-down interview in Australia. She bends forward. and her bump appears to collapse inward, folding unnaturally under her dress, a movement no natural pregnancy would produce. For a split second, even the interviewer's face freezes. But no one says a word, until the clip goes viral. Millions see it. Doctors comment anonymously. Midwives call it suspicious. But the press spins it as fabric confusion, a trick of lighting, a freak camera angle. It was nothing, right? Wrong. Because around that same time, private security details begin changing their shift patterns. Hospital press staff go silent. And a single nurse, working at the Portland Hospital in London, is suddenly transferred. Not fired, just quietly removed. Then comes the birth certificate. Released late. Missing critical information. Signed by no physician. Altered and refiled, with Meghan's royal title erased, then re-added. It's the kind of document that sparks curiosity in legal circles, but barely gets a mention in the press. Why? Because by then, the royal PR machine was in overdrive. Baby Archie had arrived. Any questions were declared inappropriate, or worse, racist. Critics were silenced. Journalists were labeled deranged. Even other royals were told to fall in line. Harry, increasingly isolated, clung to the narrative that he was now a father, a husband, a man with a new identity, one that couldn't be challenged without pulling his world apart. And Meghan? She doubled down. Public appearances, charity galas, tearful interviews about motherhood. And later, claims that her children were denied titles due to unspoken biases. She weaved racial injustice, colonial trauma, and institutional cruelty into her motherhood journey, making any critique not just controversial, but untouchable. But now, the tide is turning. Because the palace has had enough. Because the king is worried. Because Prince William, once silent, has begun asking his own staff to reopen the 2019 file. And because the woman who may have actually given birth, the real mother of the child we call Archie, has allegedly spoken to a journalist. A journalist who, as of this week, is missing. Coincidence? Maybe. But in the world of royalty, coincidence is rarely random. You're about to see hospital records no one thought would ever leak. You're going to hear voice memos. You're going to follow the money, literally, in the form of private payments to legal firms who specialize in non-disclosure agreements and birth arrangement privacy contracts. You're going to learn why the Queen's death triggered a secret legal review into the line of succession, and why two names were quietly removed from an internal document in early 2023. And you're going to ask yourself something no one dares say aloud. If Meghan Markle was never pregnant, then where did Archie and Lilibet come from? And why has the palace spent years pretending otherwise? This story isn't just about deception. It's about legacy, bloodlines, identity, and power. Because if you lie to the public about a pregnancy, that's a scandal. But if you lie to the monarchy about heirs, that's treason. And it's about to unravel in full view. Because the one person who could have stopped it all, who could have silenced everything, has now broken their silence. And they're ready to talk. But what they reveal, that's where everything changes. What does it take for millions of people to question what their eyes just saw? A trick of the light? A camera glitch? A clever edit? Or something far more deliberate? Because when Meghan Markle walked onto that small stage during an Australian media appearance in late 2018, cradling her belly in a skin-tight sheath dress, radiant with the glow of a mother-to-be, no one expected the illusion to glitch in real time. And yet it did. Her baby bump folded. Not figuratively. Not emotionally. Literally. She sat down, and the fabric beneath her baby bump crumpled, buckled, and folded inward in a way that no real human abdomen, let alone one stretched taut from pregnancy, ever could. At first, the clip barely raised a ripple. Most viewers missed it. Others laughed it off. It's the dress, they said. Fabric bunching. Weird camera angle. It happens. But then someone slowed it down. Frame by frame. Zoomed in. Stabilized the shot. Removed the background noise. And the internet erupted. The bump didn't shift. It bent. As if something soft and detached, like a foam prosthetic, had been sitting awkwardly under her dress. As if, beneath the glamour, beneath the polished PR smiles, a secret was slipping. Now let's get something straight. People wear prosthetic bumps all the time. Actors, surrogates, costume designers. It's not illegal. It's not immoral. But when you are a senior member of the British royal family, and your pregnancy positions your child directly in the line of royal succession, you are not just playing a role. You are becoming a piece of living constitutional history. And if the bump was fake, then the story was too. So why was it never questioned by the mainstream press? Why didn't Buckingham Palace issue a statement to quash the viral rumors? Why did Meghan's own team avoid any mention of the bump collapse, choosing instead to focus attention on how she was being treated by the press? Let's rewind to the day it happened. October 21st, 2018, Sydney, Australia. Harry and Meghan were wrapping up their royal tour. Spirits were high. Crowds were electric. The Duchess appeared in a snug white dress, the bump pronounced, more than it had been just days before. And yet, earlier that same week, in Melbourne, she had appeared nearly flat-bellied in a tailored navy ensemble. The difference in size was staggering. Doctors noted it. So did midwives. But the press, deeply cautious after accusations of bias, walked on eggshells. Then came the clip. In the video, Meghan steps forward, waves to the audience, and takes her seat. As she lowers herself, her baby bump buckles inward like a crescent moon, flexing horizontally and then momentarily disappearing beneath the draped fabric. It wasn't just a weird fold. It was a collapse. Social media exploded. #moonbump trended worldwide. And suddenly, a quiet group of skeptics, once dismissed as fringe, found themselves with explosive visual ammunition. The footage was shared across YouTube, TikTok, Reddit, Twitter. Millions of views. Millions of rewatches. Comments like, "That's not how a baby bump behaves. I've had 3 kids. No bump collapses like that. I work in prosthetics. That's foam movement." But the media stayed silent. Why? Because the palace said nothing. Because the threat of legal retaliation loomed large. And because the conversation was too radioactive. To question Meghan's pregnancy wasn't just taboo, it was political dynamite. Critics were branded misogynists, conspiracy theorists, or worse. But here's where the story shifts. Because that viral video wasn't the only one. As editors began sifting through archived footage from the Sussexes' tour, more moments popped up. Subtle but strange. Moments where Meghan's bump would appear smaller just a day after it looked pronounced. The belly would seem unnaturally high, then unnaturally low. Meghan would touch her stomach constantly, not with the unconscious gestures of a mother, but with deliberate repositioning, as if adjusting. Royal protocol experts, who had tracked pregnancies for decades, quietly admitted behind closed doors, "We've never seen anything like this." And then came the hospital incident. A nurse, who has since gone underground, told an investigative journalist that Portland Hospital's maternity wing was never reserved under Meghan's name. No royal security was deployed. No special ward booked. No doctor scheduled. Why? Because, allegedly, there was no need. The birth didn't happen there. In fact, it may not have happened in the UK at all. Let's go back to that video one more time. After the fold, Meghan glances at Harry. He stiffens. His eyes dart, just for a second. It's a flicker, a panic reflex. Then she smiles again. He follows suit. But the damage is done. Body language experts reviewed the moment. "That's a micro-expression of fear," one said. He's not shocked by the bump folding. He's scared someone else noticed. And what happens next? The tour's schedule changes. Suddenly, photo ops are canceled. Meghan appears in looser clothing. Her security detail tightens. Paparazzi are kept further away. And interviews are postponed indefinitely. Then, when Meghan finally re-emerges weeks later, the bump is different. Rounder. Firmer. Still. As if swapped. Now ask yourself, how many times did we see Meghan Markle in casual, unguarded moments during her pregnancy? The answer? Almost never. Her public appearances were tightly staged. Always in heels. Always in dresses. Always shot from the front. No candid photos. No paparazzi belly shots. No bare bump pregnancy shoots. Not even one verified ultrasound image. Compare that to Kate Middleton, photographed leaving the hospital hours after giving birth, hair disheveled, baby in arms, surrounded by real nurses. With Meghan, we got no hospital door photo, no named physician, no attending nurse, no footage of the labor ward, no birthing plan confirmation from medical professionals. All we had was a bump, and then a photo. Now imagine being a senior royal aide during that time. You're instructed to announce a birth that no one in the building witnessed. You're told to draft press releases with no medical source. You ask for documentation and are denied. So what do? You leak. You whisper. You record. And that's exactly what happened. Over the next 2 years, multiple palace insiders, under strict NDAs, began reaching out to reporters, lawyers, and even foreign diplomats. Quietly, anonymously, because what they saw didn't make sense. Because the risks of staying silent were too high. Because the bump didn't behave like a bump. And when they tried to speak, they were reassigned, or fired, or paid. But a few didn't take the hush money. A few kept their files. And now those files are starting to leak. We'll go through them in later chapters, in detail. From internal memos to hospital gate logs, and even private text messages between press staff that read, "She's not pregnant." Everyone knows. But let's focus on what came next. After the bump fold, the Sussexes pivoted. Meghan stopped appearing in tight dresses. Her maternity schedule was reduced, and she began hinting, in subtle ways, that her pregnancy was personal, protected, and off-limits. It became an emotional shield, an untouchable space. So no one asked, no one investigated, no one until now. Because the palace? They kept the footage. They archived every press call. They retained every email thread. And eventually, they compiled a dossier, locked in a file known internally as Project Sussex Birth. In it, dozens of inconsistencies. And one name, circled in red ink. A name linked to a California-based surrogacy agency. A name tied to a sealed payment trail. A name that disappears in 2019. We'll reveal it later. But first, let's answer the question that started this all. What does it take for millions of people to question what their eyes just saw? One video, one collapse, one impossible fold. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Where is the birth certificate? Where is the doctor who signed off? Where is the medical record, the hospital footage, the exhausted but smiling new mother on the steps of a hospital wing, arms shaking from labor, cradling a new royal heir for the world to see? Nowhere. That's where. For the birth of Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor, a child 7th in line to the throne of the British monarchy, there was no photo outside the hospital. No royal physician waving to the public. No carriage ride. No easel outside Buckingham Palace declaring the newborn's weight, time of birth, and proud parents. There was just silence, and a recycled photograph. So here's the uncomfortable question. Was there even a birth at all? Let's walk through what was supposed to happen, because royal protocol around births is usually precise, ceremonial, and very public. It's designed to establish legitimacy. To prove that the line of succession remains intact, transparent, and verifiable by the people. Let's go back. When Princess Diana gave birth to William and Harry, she stood outside the Lindo wing. Same goes for Kate Middleton, not once, but 3 times. Each time, she appeared just hours after delivery, standing beside Prince William, beaming for cameras, holding her newborn. It wasn't just tradition. It was documentation. It was proof. Meghan? Not once. Not even a hint of a hospital exit. She and Harry announced that she had gone into labor after the baby was already born. That's right. The official press release said Meghan was in labor at 1 p.m., but Archie had already been born at 5:26 a.m. that morning. Let that timeline sink in. The palace told the world she was currently in labor when she had already delivered a baby over 8 hours earlier. Why the delay? Why the deception? Now, let's talk hospital records. Every hospital in the UK, especially those dealing with high-profile births, maintains meticulous logs. Entry points, time of arrival, assigned security details, attending physicians, medical staff rotations. For the Portland Hospital, the private facility Meghan was rumored to have used, such logs exist. But the pages for May 6, 2019? They're missing. Not redacted. Not sealed. Gone. Reporters who tried to access shift logs or confirmation of a royal booking were told by staff, "We can't discuss that date." Some even reported being hung up on. Others said staff looked visibly nervous when asked. Now let's compare. When Kate Middleton gave birth, even private hospitals gave generic statements confirming preparations had been made. Security barriers were installed days in advance. Staff gave quiet nods to the press. Everyone knew. Everyone saw it. With Meghan? Nothing. The sidewalk outside Portland Hospital was empty. There were no station guards, no crowd control, no ambulances, no emergency vehicles. It was like the whole event was invisible. Even the Queen's personal gynecologist, Alan Farthing, who had previously attended all royal births, was excluded. According to palace insiders, Meghan refused his presence. Instead, she allegedly assembled her own medical team, one that has never spoken publicly. No press release, no postnatal check-in, no public record of the attending physician. Now here's where it gets stranger. The official birth certificate, released weeks later, was signed not by a doctor, but by a royal aide. Let me repeat that. Not a midwife, not an obstetrician, not a nurse, but a palace staff member. The line for attending physician left blank, and yet the document was filed, accepted, archived, no questions asked. Or were they? According to leaked emails, a senior Home Office official raised red flags about the document's lack of medical verification. They reportedly requested clarification from the palace, which, in response, issued a stern warning about interfering with private royal matters. Private? Since when is the birth of a royal heir a private affair? Then came the correction. The birth certificate was resubmitted, with minor edits. One of the changes? The title Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex was removed, replaced with Rachel Meghan Markle. This sparked immediate confusion. Why would a royal remove her own title from her child's birth certificate? Meghan's camp claimed it was not her decision, that the palace made the change. But insiders claim otherwise. That Meghan herself requested the change to distance the child's record from royal protocol. But why? Because if the record stayed linked to her title, it could be challenged. You see, under UK law, false documentation, especially involving births, can be investigated if submitted under official royal capacity. And if Meghan wasn't pregnant and didn't give birth, then submitting a document with her as the mother of record could have enormous legal ramifications, especially if there was a surrogate involved. Now let's revisit the Portland Hospital theory. Multiple sources, from former staff to royal correspondents, allege that no rooms were booked under Meghan or Harry's name. No anonymized VIP patient check-ins occurred during that week. No medical staff from the maternity wing were interviewed, quoted, or photographed. Not a single nurse or orderly came forward to say, "Yes, I saw Meghan Markle in labor." Because maybe she wasn't. One former nurse, speaking under condition of anonymity, claimed, "I remember that week. We were told to expect high alert, but no one ever showed up. The wing was quiet. It was almost like they wanted us to believe she'd been there without her ever actually stepping through the door." She then added, "They called in a cleaner to disinfect one suite, just in case. But it was never used." Now, if that wasn't enough, listen to this. That same week, private jets were tracked flying between London and Santa Barbara, landing at a discreet airstrip near Montecito. Rumors have long swirled that a surrogate may have been located in California. And if the child was delivered there and later brought to the UK, it would explain the sudden time gaps, lack of hospital records, and the delayed labor announcement. And here's the legal twist. If Archie was not born in the UK to a British citizen and was not born of Meghan's body, then he does not automatically qualify for UK citizenship or succession rights under current law. That's huge. And it explains why the palace has kept everything sealed. Too many questions. Too many missing pieces. Too many eyes watching. One royal aide, now retired, reportedly said this to a friend. "We were told not to speak of it, not to ask, not to wonder. Just smile, sign the statement, and move on." But what happens when the public starts asking? What happens when journalists notice that every other royal birth included photographs, hospital names, medical statements, and physician quotes, and this one had none? What happens when former palace staff begin leaking documents that show the birth plan was written months before and didn't include Meghan at all? And what happens when that surrogate, the woman many believe carried the child, reaches out to a London newspaper with a single message? "It's time," because that's coming. And the moment her NDA expires, everything collapses. Where was the birth? Maybe not in the Portland Hospital. Maybe not in the UK. And maybe not involving Meghan Markle at all. But what came next would shake the monarchy's legal foundations and force Prince William to quietly assemble a team to dig into everything the public was never supposed to see. How do you fake a pregnancy when the entire world is watching? Answer: you don't. You manage one. You orchestrate. You cure it. You stage. Because a lie that big has to be perfectly timed. Now ask yourself this. How can a woman show no signs of a bump in October, flaunt a full belly in November, and then seemingly shrink again by December, only to balloon weeks later? Welcome to the paradox of Meghan Markle's pregnancy timeline, a puzzle riddled with contradictions, fashion missteps, panicked media spin, and one very important question. Was there ever a real pregnancy at all? Let's go back to the start. October 15th, 2018. Kensington Palace releases a statement. Their Royal Highnesses the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are very pleased to announce that the Duchess of Sussex is expecting a baby in the spring of 2019. Cue the global celebration, the glowing headlines, the endless baby bump speculation. But here's the thing. Just one day earlier, literally 24 hours before, Meghan had been photographed stepping off a plane in Australia for her first major royal tour, wearing a figure-hugging coat, flat stomach, no visible bump. No one suspected a thing. In fact, when she removed the coat during engagements in Sydney, royal watchers noticed she didn't look pregnant at all. Her waistline was intact, her movement agile, her hands not once placed on her belly. And yet, less than 48 hours later, she's suddenly bump cradling in tighter clothing, smiling coyly, and announcing she's already 12 weeks along. That means she would have been 3 months pregnant during the Sydney airport photos. And yet, she appeared physically identical to just weeks before. Suspicious? Let's look closer. By mid-November 2018, just 4 weeks after the announcement, Meghan's bump had grown significantly. Royal engagements showed her in tight dresses with a very pronounced belly. So pronounced, in fact, that outlets speculated she might be further along than claimed. By January 2019, her bump appeared smaller again. By March, it had shifted higher. By April, it was large, low, and unnaturally firm. It was as if the bump had a mind of its own. Now, pregnancies vary. We know that. Every woman carries differently. But prosthetic bumps, silicone moon bumps, as the internet has called them, come in standardized shapes and sizes. They're meant to simulate growth in a progressive but not necessarily accurate way. And once you start switching models mid-pregnancy, people notice. Side-by-side comparisons show. November bump, sharply round and protruding. December bump, slightly deflated, resting higher. January bump, flat during morning appearances, swollen by evening. February bump, rigid and motionless during walkabouts. March bump, visibly jiggling while walking, but completely still when seated. Doctors reviewing the footage noted an obvious contradiction. A baby bump that size would naturally shift, especially during prolonged standing or movement. Her posture and gait suggest no added weight in her abdomen. In one clip, the bump actually bounces unnaturally. Let's pause here, because while all this might sound speculative, there was a timeline leak, and it came from inside the palace. A royal aide, one of the Sussex survivors, as former staff called themselves, anonymously forwarded a document to a private legal advisor in spring 2021. That document allegedly showed 2 parallel schedules: public pregnancy appearances, surrogacy agency communications, and the dates did not match up. According to the document, Meghan had been in communication with a US-based surrogacy agency in early August 2018, months before the public pregnancy announcement. Payments were allegedly arranged through a trust tied to Archewell, their foundation, but routed through a private family attorney. Even more stunning, the contract listed a due date of late April 2019, perfectly aligned with Archie's public birthday. Now ask yourself, if Meghan was pregnant, why would she be signing surrogacy contracts 3 months before announcing? Even worse, the timeline of her public bump progression does not follow standard medical expectations. According to OBGYNs, a woman showing visibly at 12 weeks, as Meghan did in November 2018, should have been ready to give birth by February or March. But Meghan didn't give birth until May 6th, 7 months after first showing. So either she was carrying a 10-month baby, or she wasn't carrying one at all. Now let's rewind again, this time to May 2018, just after the royal wedding. Multiple reports claimed that Meghan was already talking about having a baby immediately. But there were whispers from her team, concerns about fertility issues, that she had sought medical consultation in Toronto, that she was exploring alternative options, including IVF and possibly surrogacy. These rumors were dismissed until a confidential email from a former Soho House associate surfaced in early 2023. That email, leaked anonymously, contained this line: "She wants to time it for the spring. Surrogacy is her plan B, but she wants to control the story no matter what." Control the story. Let that sink in. Because that's what this all comes back to, control. If Meghan used a surrogate, that's her personal choice. But faking a pregnancy? Manipulating public emotion? Publishing false birth details on a legal document? Using the illusion of motherhood to claim racial discrimination in royal title disputes? That's not just deceit. That's narrative warfare. Now, a crucial detail. Under UK law, if a child is born via surrogate, the intended parents must file for parental orders within 6 months. It is a transparent legal process, not something the royal family could hide. Unless the child wasn't born in the UK. If Archie was born via surrogate in the US and then brought to the UK after the fact, the palace would have no legal obligation to disclose the method of birth, especially if the surrogate signed a sealed non-disclosure agreement. And what if that surrogate was paid handsomely? According to financial analysts tracking Archewell-affiliated LLCs, a lump sum payment of $850,000 was made in March 2019 to a California-based consulting agency, one with no public-facing website, employees, or physical office. And shortly after that payment, the Sussexes vanished from the public eye for weeks. No baby updates, no bump photos, no due date confirmations, just silence. Until May 6th, when, without warning, the palace announced Meghan had delivered at dawn. And less than 2 days later, the couple stood in Windsor Castle with a mysterious baby wrapped in white. No hospital footage, no family present, and no visible bond between mother and child. Even stranger? Meghan's postnatal appearance showed no signs of childbirth. Her face? Radiant. Her body? Slim. Her walk? Smooth. Her makeup? Impeccable. No swelling. No exhaustion. No fragility. Compare that to Kate Middleton, who left the hospital hours after each birth and still looked flushed, disoriented, and physically taxed. Meghan looked untouched. Why? Because, as one royal correspondent said, she didn't look like she had given birth. She looked like she had just finished a Vogue shoot. And behind the scenes, the palace knew something was wrong. William reportedly demanded clarification on the birth timeline. Sources say he requested a detailed account from the Sussex communications team and received vague answers. One insider claimed they couldn't provide the name of the doctor. They couldn't confirm the hospital. And they said the birth plan was confidential. That's when William's suspicion turned to anger. Because this wasn't just about Meghan. This was about the integrity of the monarchy. You don't lie about a royal birth. You don't fake a bloodline. You don't manipulate the crown's succession. But the timeline didn't just raise eyebrows. It triggered action. William began compiling a file. A quiet investigation. He dubbed it Operation Sussex Doubt. We'll unpack that in the next chapter. But for now, remember this. Every lie needs a timeline. Every illusion needs coordination. Every deception eventually falls apart. And this one was starting to crumble. But what Prince William uncovered next, hidden in a royal archive, locked behind 3 layers of legal access, was not only damning. It was explosive. What does a future king do when he suspects the crown has been compromised? Not from outside, but from within. He investigates. Quietly. Methodically. Ruthlessly. Because when Prince William realized that the timeline surrounding Meghan Markle's alleged pregnancy didn't add up, when hospital records vanished, birth certificates were altered, and his brother offered no clear answers, he didn't go to the press. He went to war. A secret war. And no one in the public had a clue. Let's set the scene. May 2019. Just days after the public debut of baby Archie, William's private secretary noticed something odd. A series of scheduled briefings about the birth, meant to be attended by senior royals, were quietly cancelled by Harry's team. Questions about the birth certificate were stonewalled. Charles's aides were given vague answers about which doctor attended. And, most bizarrely, no official medical report had been filed within the palace archive. A tradition dating back over a century. That's when William allegedly whispered 3 chilling words to his private legal advisor. Start the file. That file would become what insiders now refer to as Operation Sussex Doubt, a classified royal inquiry initiated not by Parliament, not by the Privy Council, but by the heir to the throne himself. It began with a list. Names, dates, places, moments that didn't align. Meghan's first visibly pregnant appearance, October 2018. Prior footage showing a flat abdomen, October 13th. Announcement of labor, May 6, 2019, 1 p.m. Birth certificate shows delivery time, 5:26 a.m. that same day. Labor was publicly announced after the baby was born. Too many contradictions. Too much misdirection. And Harry? When William allegedly confronted his brother, he didn't get answers. He got rage. Sources close to the brothers describe a private argument in late May 2019 at Kensington Palace, one of their last ever face-to-face meetings. According to one staffer who overheard shouting behind closed doors, William kept asking for clarity. Harry said it wasn't William's business. William said it was the monarchy's business. Harry stormed out. From that moment on, communication between the brothers collapsed. But William didn't stop digging. He tasked his personal aide, a trusted staffer from his Eton days, to begin cross-referencing public photos with the palace's private event archive. Every outfit, every video, every bump angle, every inconsistency. It was obsessive. It was personal. It was urgent. One former royal advisor later said, William felt like his family's name was being turned into a circus act, that centuries of protocol were being mocked, and no one had the courage to say it. The first real break came in July 2019, just 2 months after Archie's debut. William's team received a tip from a former staffer, a woman who had briefly worked with the Sussex's security detail during their time at Frogmore Cottage. She claimed to have seen no postpartum medical staff visiting Meghan in the days following the birth. No midwives, no lactation consultants, no newborn specialists, none of the regular royal postnatal services. Instead, she observed rotating private nannies, several of whom arrived at night, through a separate gate, under aliases. She also claimed the baby wasn't always there. Let that sink in. She alleged that the baby would disappear for days at a time, that she was told not to ask questions, that Harry seemed detached and Meghan hyperscripted. William's team added this account to the file. Then, in October 2019, a bombshell. A royal photographer, longtime palace affiliate, reached out privately. He had been assigned to document Meghan's pregnancy over the course of her public engagements. But he noticed something unusual. Her bump changed shape too often. It wasn't natural. I've photographed dozens of pregnant royals. The movement wasn't right. It was like she was wearing different props on different days. He provided unpublished photos, ones that never made it into the press because they revealed too much. One showed Meghan bending in a way that caused the bump to shift upward instead of flattening. Another showed a clear line beneath her dress. The seam of what he suspected was a silicone prosthetic. William reviewed them personally, and reportedly, his expression said it all. He didn't ask for verification. He asked for containment. Because now, the future king knew, this wasn't just a hunch. This wasn't just online gossip. This was a real scandal, wrapped in fabric, cloaked in silence, and set to explode if the public ever found out. But how do you investigate a member of your own family without igniting a constitutional crisis? William turned to a royal lawyer, not one on the official payroll, but a trusted friend, once involved in royal succession litigation in the early 2000s. Quiet, discreet, brilliant. Together, they mapped out a legal theory. If Archie had been born via surrogate without disclosure, and if that surrogate was not British, the child may not qualify for the line of succession under the Act of Settlement and the British Nationality Act. More than that, if Meghan had filed documentation naming herself as the birth mother, when in fact she was not, it could constitute fraud. And not just fraud in the public sense. Fraud against the crown. But William wasn't ready to go nuclear. Not yet. Instead, he made a call to King Charles. It was brief, tense, clinical. He presented the timeline inconsistencies, the staffer testimony, the hospital absence, the fake bump footage. And he asked a simple question. Are you prepared to let this go? Charles, according to insiders, said, not until I know what's true. But here's where it gets more complicated. Because Charles's advisors had long been pushing for reconciliation with Harry. For optics. For stability. For legacy. And this investigation? It was poison. So William was told, in polite but firm terms, to pause the inquiry. To let the past be the past. To focus on the future of the monarchy. He refused. Instead, he moved his file, Operation Sussex Doubt, off official systems, into private storage, trusted to just 3 people, himself, his aide, and the legal advisor. And yet, the existence of the file leaked anyway. Weeks later, a tabloid published a cryptic headline. William's concerns over Archie's birth resurface. Buried in the article was a quote from a senior palace source. The Duke of Cambridge has always taken the integrity of royal records very seriously. Harry saw the article, and he exploded. According to close friends, Harry believed his own brother was trying to undermine his family, his children, his legacy. He stopped returning William's calls. He pulled further into Montecito, and the rift, already deep, became permanent. But William wasn't done. He'd uncovered a name, someone referenced in private emails tied to Meghan's early 2018 planning. The name belonged to a woman who once worked with a California-based gestational carrier agency. A woman who disappeared from public records shortly after Archie's birth. And William's legal team? They tracked her. Her location? Santa Barbara. Her lawyer? A specialist in reproductive privacy. Her contract? Reportedly airtight. But one clause stood out, a termination date. If the terms were correct, the non-disclosure would expire in early 2025. And as of now, she's free to speak. William knows it. Charles knows it. Meghan and Harry know it. And the press? They're circling. Because if that woman talks, if she confirms what William suspects, if she reveals that Meghan Markle never carried the child, now 7th in line to the throne, the entire monarchy will have to act. Silence will no longer protect them. But just as William was preparing to initiate formal legal review within the Privy Council, something happened. A phone call from an anonymous number. The voice on the other end? Shaking. Quiet. American accent. She said 3 words before hanging up. I'm ready now. William's hands trembled. Because if that was who he thought it was, if the call was real, then the truth was about to break. And what came next would be unstoppable. Every illusion depends on one thing, the camera. If you control the lens, you control the story. If you control the angle, you control perception. If you control the lighting, the framing, the release time, the narrative, then you've already won. Unless someone forgets to delete the raw files. And in this case, that someone was a royal photographer. A man who had worked with the palace for years. A man who had captured Kate's glowing maternity portraits, Charles's quiet garden walks, even Queen Elizabeth's final Trooping the Color. A man so trusted he was often given exclusive access, even before press embargoes lifted. His name? You won't find it published. Not yet. For legal reasons, he's asked to remain anonymous. But what we do know is this. He was assigned to document Meghan Markle's pregnancy. Not just the big events, but the in-betweens, the candid moments, the personal shots meant for private royal archives. And in those quiet moments, with no press agents hovering, no Netflix cameras curating the frame, he began to notice something strange. Very strange. Let's rewind to December 2018. The setting, a holiday charity event at Brinsworth House. Meghan arrived in a floral dress that clung tightly to her midsection. The bump was visible, but oddly stiff. Not round. Not dynamic. It didn't move as she moved. It almost looked strapped on. The photographer snapped away. But when he reviewed the images that evening, something caught his eye. In one frame, Meghan is stepping into a room. Her dress pulls tightly across her abdomen. And there, faintly visible under the fabric, is a horizontal seam. Not of the dress, but of something beneath the dress. A ridge. A line. The kind you'd see on a prosthetic belly with detachable parts. He brought it up to a colleague. Could just be shadows, the other photographer said. So he let it go. Until it happened again. January 2019. Meghan visits the Mayhew Animal Welfare Charity. She bends to pet a dog. As she crouches, the bump lifts, but not the way a natural bump would. It pivots upward, like an accessory shifting on a belt. And then it wobbles. The photographer caught that moment. A single frame. So fast you'd miss it in real time. But in stills? Crystal clear. He reviewed the image. Zoomed in. Zoomed further. Meghan's hand is on the bump, adjusting it. Not absent-mindedly. Deliberately. As if repositioning it beneath her dress. Now here's the kicker. After sending his shots to the palace press office for standard review, that photo was flagged. Not for bad lighting. Not for poor composition. But for optics. He was asked not to include it in the public release. He asked why. The reply? Senior aides have requested tighter control on bump imagery. Nothing controversial. Nothing ambiguous. Thank you for understanding. It raised a red flag. But not loud enough. Not until February 2019, during Meghan's famous baby shower trip to New York. Paparazzi were everywhere. But this photographer, one of the few UK-based personnel flown in privately, was granted discreet access to hotel entrances, exits, and a few posed photos outside the Mark Hotel. What he saw stunned him. Meghan arrived one evening in a black coat, carrying a gift bag. Her bump was entirely gone. No joke. No exaggeration. It wasn't small. It was absent. The coat hung flat. No curve. No bulge. Nothing. Now remember, this was supposed to be just weeks before she gave birth. Hours later, when she reappeared in the morning, the bump was back. Round. Protruding. Press-ready. Same coat. Different shape. The photographer took side shots. Angled ones. High resolution. And once again, a suspicious outline beneath the fabric. Something pressing outward with unnatural symmetry. He saved those photos to a secure drive, but they were never published. In fact, Meghan's PR team, working independently from the palace, demanded that all external photographers submit files directly to them first. That had never happened before. Not with Kate. Not even with Diana. This wasn't standard procedure. This was control. Visual control. But our photographer kept everything. Every raw file. Every unedited shot. Every close-up. And most importantly, a log of the dates, times, and GPS coordinates. Why? Because by now, he no longer believed what he was seeing. And he wasn't alone. Several other photographers, freelance and accredited, started talking among themselves. Quietly. Behind embargoed deadlines. At private media mixers. Always off the record. They began trading shots. Comparing files. They noticed. Meghan's bump height would change. Higher in the morning, lower in the afternoon. The shape of the bump differed depending on the event. Sometimes, it shifted during movement. Other times, it was completely static, even when she laughed, twisted, or reached upward. Theories spread. Moon bump. Foam insert. Photo op pregnancy. But then came March 11, 2019, Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey. This would be Meghan's last major public appearance before supposedly going on maternity leave. She arrived in a crisp white coat and matching pillbox hat. Harry by her side. Cameras flashing. The bump? Large. Round. Suspiciously low. The photographer, now fully convinced something was off, snapped as many angles as possible. One in particular caught Meghan mid-step. The coat lifted slightly, revealing a distinct bulge beneath a silk slip. But not a pregnancy bulge. A strap. He zoomed. Enhanced. Stabilized. There it was. A faint outline across her back. The signature X-strap pattern used to hold pregnancy prosthetics in place under clothing. He froze. This wasn't an illusion. This wasn't speculation. This was evidence. He didn't publish it. He couldn't. Releasing that shot would end his royal career. Possibly ruin his life. So he archived it. Encrypted it. Made 3 backups. Then he told a friend, a former palace staffer who had since moved into journalism. She saw the photo and said one word. Finally, because she'd seen something too. A discarded dressing room garment after an event, with a curved foam insert stitched to the inside. A tag reading XS Flex Maternity Shell. A shipping label traced to a costume studio in Los Angeles. She hadn't spoken of it. Until now. Together, they began compiling a visual dossier. A timeline of inconsistencies. A gallery of unreleased images. Then came the tipping point. May 8, 2019, the Windsor Castle baby reveal. Meghan appears, holding baby Archie in a white dress. Hair glossy. Heels sharp. No hospital bracelet. No signs of labor. And for the first time, no bump. Of course not. The baby was born. But here's the problem. Just days earlier, at an untelevised charity meeting, Meghan had been photographed still showing. Not full bump, but a soft bulge, as if the moon bump hadn't been removed in time. The timeline didn't match. You don't give birth and keep your bump for 72 hours. Unless the birth hadn't happened, or she hadn't been the one to deliver. By now, our photographer was in too deep. He stopped trusting editors. He stopped sending his full sets to agencies. He worked independently, quietly, with encrypted files and hidden folders. But it was too late. In early 2020, he received a letter from a solicitor demanding the immediate deletion of all unreleased files related to Meghan Markle's pregnancy, citing privacy, unauthorized possession, and unauthorized storage of sensitive imagery. The request came not from Buckingham Palace. It came from an American law firm based in California. The photographer refused. He knew the law. The images were taken in public, in plain sight, on official assignments. But the pressure escalated. Emails, threats, even a visit from two men claiming to represent a private rights organization. So he did the only thing he could. He created a digital vault, password-protected, off-grid, geo-redundant. And inside, he uploaded everything. And he added a note. If anything happens to me, release this. The truth deserves light. Because the truth, in this case, wasn't speculation. It was visual, unfiltered, unedited, undeniable. The lens had caught what the world wasn't supposed to see, and someone inside the palace knew it. Because weeks later, Prince William himself requested a private viewing of the photographer's unreleased shots. What he saw made him go pale, because the photos didn't just prove a bump. They proved a conspiracy. But what came next was even more dangerous than a photo. What do you do when a carefully managed lie starts to leak from the seams? You control the final narrative. You craft your last defense. You call Oprah. Because when the royal illusion was beginning to crack, when photographers were noticing inconsistencies, staffers were whispering to the press, and Prince William had already begun a private investigation. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry sat down for the most explosive, emotionally charged interview of their lives. Oprah Winfrey Presents. The Sussexes Unfiltered. It aired on March 7, 2021. A glossy, sunlit backdrop. Soft garden chairs. Chicken clucks in the distance. Tears. Gasps. Historic allegations. But behind the scenes, it was chaos. You see, this wasn't just any interview. This was a strategic strike. A last-minute Hail Mary pass to reclaim the public's trust before the questions became too loud to ignore. And Meghan? She was ready to redirect. Let's rewind. In the months leading up to the Oprah sit-down, rumors about Archie's birth were swirling online like a Category 5 hurricane. The moonbump theory, the folding belly footage, the vanishing hospital trail, Twitter threads, YouTube exposés, Reddit subforums dissecting every maternity dress in slow motion. Meghan and Harry's team saw it all. They knew the palace was staying quiet, but watching closely. They knew the birth certificate had already been questioned. They knew photographers were holding back unreleased images. And they knew the public was starting to ask, wait a minute, was she ever pregnant? So what did they do? They leaned into the one narrative that could silence all criticism, freeze royal lips, and shield them from scrutiny. Racism. In the Oprah interview, Meghan said something that sent shockwaves around the globe. There were conversations about how dark his skin might be when he was born. It was a loaded allegation. One so powerful, it turned the press away from the pregnancy inconsistencies and toward outrage at the palace. And it worked brilliantly. News anchors worldwide dropped the bump debate overnight. Headlines screamed royals accused of racism, palace crisis. Who said it? The strategy had been deployed. And the distraction? Total. But what was left on the cutting room floor? Here's where things get dark. An insider involved in the production. A junior editor working under Harpo Studios' post-production team leaked to a journalist that the pregnancy topic was deliberately edited and reshaped. Yes, edited. Strategically. Here's what they claimed. Oprah originally asked a series of questions about Meghan's experience giving birth, including pain management, hospital staff, and how it differed from expectations. Meghan's answers were inconsistent. She allegedly referenced a home birth, then contradicted herself by mentioning the amazing staff at Portland. At one point, she paused, turned to Harry, and asked, "Can we say that part?" Oprah, visibly uncomfortable, changed topics, pivoting to titles and racial bias. The footage of those awkward exchanges? Cut. Gone from the final broadcast. Erased from the CBS release. Buried in the vault. Why? Because Meghan's team had negotiated editorial control. According to sources, their contract included an unprecedented clause, pre-broadcast screening rights. That meant Meghan and Harry were allowed to preview the final edit and request changes, under the guise of privacy and security. And they did. Sources allege they submitted 6 rounds of revision requests. 6. And among the changes? The removal of all references to specific doctors, cutting a line where Meghan said, "We never actually went to the hospital." Editing out a moment where Oprah asked, "Did you carry Archie yourself?" Silencing a visible tension between Meghan and Harry when the topic of labor came up. One editor described it as the most sanitized, carefully managed interview I've ever worked on. It wasn't raw. It was a script. But why sanitize it? Because the pregnancy story was too risky. If Meghan stumbled, even once, on camera, if she contradicted the public timeline, the house of cards would collapse. So they restructured the entire segment around how Meghan was treated, not whether she had told the truth. In PR terms, this is called flipping the narrative. And it worked. But here's the irony. In their attempt to control the story, they only fueled more suspicion. Body language analysts began breaking down the Oprah interview frame by frame. Their findings? Meghan displayed inconsistent eye contact when asked about Archie's birth. She touched her face repeatedly, a common sign of anxiety. When Oprah brought up title and protection, Meghan looked to Harry, as if awaiting approval. And Harry? He visibly clenched his jaw and broke eye contact with both women. One expert noted, it's as if they were avoiding something much bigger. The energy didn't match the words. And the public? They felt it too. Despite the media's initial fawning, public opinion polls began to shift, slowly but steadily. A growing number of viewers said something didn't sit right. Why didn't she just name the hospital? Why so vague about labor? Why was Archie not even in the footage? And here's the most telling part. No raw footage from the Oprah interview has ever been released. None. Not a single behind-the-scenes clip. Not a blooper reel. Not a producer's cut. Not even a discarded segment aired later for ratings. Unusual? Extremely. Even the royal family's most controversial interviews, like Princess Diana's 1995 panorama, eventually released full transcripts. But Meghan's? Locked. The original footage is sealed in a legal vault. According to Harpo Insiders, it is bound by a non-disclosure clause that expires in 2026. Why 2026? Possibly to allow enough time to ride out the public scrutiny. Possibly to distance the birth controversy from future litigation. Or possibly to buy time. Because even during the interview, Meghan made subtle hints that seemed to contradict her own timeline. She spoke of her emotional recovery, but never mentioned physical recovery. She mentioned the pain of watching Archie's skin be judged, but not the pain of giving birth. She described motherhood, but not labor, as if motherhood was a role, not an experience. And that's the